so the blast would hit our back and the glass wouldn't hit us in the face. And that's what it was. And after like the third or fourth rocket, you just laugh about it.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, this is going to be a cool episode. I'm bringing you Alejandro Garcia. Dude, you want to talk about a crazy story and a crazy journey this guy's been on, from the Marine Corps to all over the world to diver and then creating this badass spice company. It's a really, really cool adventure he's fixing to take us on. And make sure you stay to the end to hear about his spice project and the specials he has along with it. So enjoy this one. All right, guys, so this is going to be a fun and interesting episode. I'm bringing my buddy Alejandro, I just wanted to say it cool, Garcia, to share his story. And it's going to be a fun ride because I really like some of the shit that he's into, and I'm really excited to talk about this. We'll get there. But Alejandro, dude, welcome to the show, brother, man. Tell us your story.
Thanks for having me. I'm just a basic guy. I'm one of those coffee-drinking, bourbon sipping, cigar smoking spicers. That's what it's all about. You know, I like the nice flavors in life, sometimes exotic, other times rare.
Are we still talking about spices?
Spices and everything. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to share what I know and what I have with everybody because we should all enjoy it.
Hell yeah, dude. Hell yeah. So you've been on kind of a fun ride with your story and your journey. Kick us off, man. Tell us a little bit about how you got all the way to here.
Well, it all starts off, you know, like they say, you don't got to be the straight A student, the honor roll person to get where you're at. And I was always that average kid. Didn't like school, and honestly, I was not the honor student till my 30s. So,
you know what's funny about that is I think the theme of success sometimes is no schooling. And I know it's probably a horrible thing to say, but a lot of the people that are really crushing it in life aren't the smartest guys on the block, right?
Well, it's not necessarily school, but the school of hard knocks, and that's how, how hard you get knocked down, and then if you're deciding to come back up.
Exactly right.
And that's what it is. We all rise, we all fall. I tried a couple of businesses here and there. I was always told when I was in the corporate world, there's 3 types of people: the worker, the manager, and the owner. And I had the worker and the manager part down, and now it's becoming the owner part. And that's where we have all our success and our failures, but mostly our experience.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. So your family's all from Texas.
Yes.
Except for you.
Well, yes. So I would be first generation born out of Texas.
I've never heard anybody put it that way. First generation born out of Texas. All right. I mean, I know everybody who's from Texas or lives in Texas, you know, we think we're the biggest, the baddest, the greatest. You know, it's like being a Marine, you know.
Exactly. You know, well, Texas was something that my family's been here since before it was even called Texas. So if we go further back out is when Spain had to reconquista, and they were getting rid of all Sephardic Jews out of Spain, and the Catholics were taking over, you know, and after the Jews were sent to New Spain, then they pushed out the Moors, and then they moved from the Mediterranean all the way to what we see in Portugal. So my family came out here to this region. They had 2 porciones, 2 and 9, if I'm not mistaken, that equated about 999,000 acres.
Oh, wow.
Right, yeah. So when the family came out here in the 16th century, you know, eventually, I mean, if you go down south to southern Texas, we all look the same. So my mom's big joke was that she was trying to clear the bloodline and make sure cousins were marrying cousins, right?
So dude, that's crazy. I think about my lineage, and I can go back to, like, grandma. I mean, that's about as far back as I can go. You're talking about the 1600s. Holy jeez.
Oh, yeah. So it's pretty confirmed. It's real nice to know that history, but honestly, I didn't know it growing up. It wasn't until maybe about 4 or 5 years ago that I get more serious into it, and that's what spawned the company I have now. I was like every other Marine. When I got out the Corps, got into private security, did some EP work, in between a couple of odds and ends. They even opened up a security company in Los Angeles. That was a big eye-opener and a big failure. And we got to watch out for stuff like that. It's a saturated market, very red ocean in California, and a lot of it has to do with gun laws, basically.
Right.
So my company, I was allowed to have open carry, concealed carry.
Oh, God, I can only imagine they were freaking out in California if you're doing open carry.
It really was, but my neighbors liked it. I was always one of those guys, helped a little lady across the street, and I lived in a gated community that was originally just for old people, or the elderly, we'll put it that way. And I kind of worked my way in, and it wasn't bad. They liked it. It was round. They liked my patrol card that I had, because I was trying to focus on HOAs.
Right.
But that wasn't going too well, so I had to subcontract for a celebrity bodyguard company.
Oh, interesting. Well, let me ask you this. So when you got out of the Marine Corps and you transitioned then into civilian life, I just love asking this question because I know what that story is for most people. Walk us through. What was that transition life going from hardcore military to civilian world?
The worst.
I have yet to say I have somebody go, dude, it was the most awesome experience ever, right?
No, it was horrible because I had one of 2 choices. Go back to Chicago where I grew up, and I didn't want to go back there. You know, South Chicago is not a place to be. And, you know, I was a single dad when I got out, so I didn't want to take my son there. And I mentioned this in a different interview this week, but I was one of those Marines where you fall into a category to where you're active duty, but you're homeless. So I was going through a divorce, so I couldn't live in a barracks. The geopads were overbooked, and I couldn't get BAH. It was just all sorts of weird stuff. So I found a girlfriend to basically live with.
With a son or daughter?
I have a son.
Okay.
And what it was, at the time, I was awarded 50-50 custody. Now I have full custody. He's been living with me straight since he was 2.5, so I have 100% custody rights.
So, but let's dive into that a little bit, because I guarantee the civilian world doesn't understand what you just said. So you're active duty.
Yes.
Because of your circumstances, you're not allowed to live on base in a barracks.
Correct.
There's no housing open to you.
Correct.
So literally you are defending the country, working for the government, and have no place to live.
Exactly. Or no pay to afford rent.
Right, because they're not giving you a stipend, basically, so people understand it. When you have a wife and you're allowed to live off base, the military gives you a stipend to help offset those costs because you don't make enough money to afford those costs. And because you don't fit the proper thing to get the stipend, you have no place to live and literally have to go find a girlfriend. So, I mean, good on you. Smart move.
Yeah, kind of.
Well, you weren't living in your car.
Well, it got to that point because you got to watch out. That's why I've never been a fan of online dating, but that was the quickest way to find somebody when you're bouncing around. And maybe, I'm not sure if it's changed.
All right, I got to pick on you. Well, how did that go? Hey, you look cute. I need a place to stay. I mean,
well, what it was, I was so new to computers at the time. I was a dumb grunt. So, I mean, I was a college dropout, all that. I just knew how to send a Yahoo because that's what we learned on overseas emails, and that was about it. And, back then during our tours, you had the 3-second delay phones. You didn't have Zoom or
right.
like that. So it was kind of rough. And actually, a buddy of mine in the Marines, he helped me out get on this website. At the time, it was called American Singles. That's what it was. I should have been smarter and got on JDate. I don't know.
Hey, my old business partner met his wife on JDate. So
yeah, I mean,
for people that don't know what that is, that's basically an online Jewish dating site. So
yeah, there would have somebody with a job, I guess. So I had a buddy of mine, Corey. I'm like, he was filtering out. He goes, well, she's pretty. I went based on his criteria. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll date this one.
So you entrusted your livelihood as far as having a place to live to another Marine.
Right.
What the hell are you thinking?
Well, you put it like that, then yeah, of course, that was a bad choice.
That's awesome.
He was my swipe left, I guess.
That's awesome. So, wow. That's crazy. So what happened when you got out? I mean, I know it was a rough transit. Nobody has a smooth transition go out. Did you walk into a job or what?
Well, that was the weird thing. I remember going to TAPS and this guy came in. He looked kind of fancy, shiny suit, all that. And he's like, hey, where's all my grunts at? Maybe like 8 of us in TAPS raised our hands. And then he brought in some pretty boy. And the guy walked in. He had some nice clothes on, whatever. He's like, you guys like money? I made $250,000 this year. I just bought a Porsche. And well, it was for a contract security company. And 2005, that's when those guys were making hand over fist, easily
right.
$200,000 or whatever. So, as I said, I was going through my divorce, single dad. I wanted to join. A few guys went. They made, I guess you could say, a career out of it before. Now, I guess you're lucky if you make 30 or 40.
Right.
But those guys are making serious money. But what was I going to do with my kid? I didn't want to send him to Chicago, and I had 50-50 custody at the time. So I couldn't do it, even though, man, what an opportunity that would have been. So from there, when I made it to LA, I was doing odd and end jobs. I was working for hippies at Redondo Beach. I was wrapping gift baskets so we could sell on the corner for like Mother's Day, Easter, all that stuff. Yeah, it was horrible.
Hey, whatever you got to do to make the money, right?
Yeah, but it takes a toll on you because like you were saying earlier, I mean, I was very fortunate to be in OAF-1 and OAF-2. So America still had a different view of the Marines and Iraq at the time. George Bush was still on the rise, and people were getting houses worth $300,000-$400,000 while making minimum wage. There I was in a verbally and physically abusive relationship with some woman I met online that if I didn't, do dishes or whatever, she throw a pot at me and then call the LAPD that I was being abusive. So it was a very hard thing.
So, do the damn dishes, jeez.
What? I didn't tell you about it. I didn't know there was dishes in the sink.
I can just, if I'm in that situation, I'm just throwing the dishes out. I mean, hell.
Oh, it was bad stuff, man. I'm telling you, that's the point to where I chose to stay in my car after a while.
Well, I know I made light of that, but the thing people need to hear is abuse happens on both sides of the aisle. I mean, it's not always the guys abusing the women. I mean, there's some rough and tumbling gals out there that it's not good either way, but when a guy can't physically defend himself in those situations without severe repercussions, even in a defense situation, it's really a tough spot for a guy to be put in. And I'm not taking the light away from women by any means.
By all means. But guys, watch out. If she's Latina and under 5'5", she's going to have a wicked arm. So
I'm going to let you say that one. I'm not even going to touch that. I'm not even going to touch that.
And that's just experience there. Oh, man, there was a few of those bad stories, but I'm sure people don't want to hear those. But
I can guarantee some of my listeners were like, "Can they tell the story?"
Well, I'll tell you, the worst is like when you want to get arrested by LAPD just so you could get out the house. And that's how bad it was. So, yeah, I was trying to move out, so I was just tired of it. And I thought I could move out while she was gone, and she got home too soon. And she saw all my gear by the front of the house. And the thing that saved me is that I had my blues draped over the front couch. So when she called Harbor Patrol on me, that was the part of LA we were in, they came in, guns blazing. At the time, I was a Marine Raider, so I was used to having my head shaved all the time because of all the sand and everything. It's a very dirty job, so I enjoyed it. And kind of transitioning a little, it's like you're saying what to end up doing. Well, during that time, I became a commercial diver. So it was definitely a lot easier to keep a shaved head. But being that I used just a traditional breathing system, I didn't have like a helmet on or anything underwater. So I only go maybe 50 feet because it's just there at the LA Harbor. LA Harbor's not very deep. I had a goatee. So here I am with a shaved head and a goatee. And it's summertime. And I'm wearing like a black wife beater and for the Marine Corps. So you can obviously see that I might not have looked like a veteran.
Right.
I look more like I belong in East Los Angeles.
Right. How many tattoos do you have?
At that point, I probably had about 13.
Right, I'm just giving everybody the full visual. You got a Spanish guy, shaved head, we call them guinea tees or wife beater tank top.
Right. I'm worried that because it's summertime, it's hot in the valley, and that was the part of, it was the town, if anybody knows about LA, called San Pedro. And San Pedro, I lived in the valley part, so there's like extra hot. So it was just, it was very bad. So when LAPD showed up, they came with like 3 squad cars, 7 officers, guns blazing. They got me down on gunpoint against a stucco wall. I'm automatically guilty, right? So I was like, man, it's like being in the Marines. You're guilty to proven innocent.
Right.
The moment they go into the house and they saw my dress blues draped on the couch, then it went from, me being this cholo to me being called sir. And I was like, oh, I'm a sir now, huh? Yeah, I was just getting so mad. I just wanted to go to jail just to get out of that situation. And then they were cool. They talked to me, it was more than once. And they're like, you seem like a good guy. You got to get out of here. And I'm like, I can't. I'm financially stuck. So it was either, what do I do during my custody time? I had to put up with the abuse so my kid had a place to go, or, go on the streets with a kid. My son was under 2 years old at the time.
God.
Yeah, it was a rough deal because the thing is, what do I do for work? And that's what I was getting at. It was during the heyday of the Bush era. everybody was getting all these beautiful houses, doing like minimum wage work. I couldn't find a job to save my life. And I was too stupid at the time because, you're going through TAPS and I'm going through a divorce. I'm not paying attention to anything.
Right.
So I didn't know I had 5 years of VA. I didn't know how to obtain my GI Bill correctly. Post 9/11, I didn't pay attention to that. If I would have known about post 9/11 then, forget about it, right?
Right.
But lessons learned. And that's what you're talking about. We go through these hard times. We figure it out. Hopefully someone's listening to, stories like this, like, wow, there is an option.
Yeah.
Because
100%.
I had no idea. I ended up working at Home Depot. That kind of helped me a bit. I was the third highest paid guy at the store at $11.35 an hour. So Home Depot
in California.
Yeah, exactly. Los Angeles County. It wasn't like that. When I was in high school, guys are at Home Depot making $15 an hour selling paint.
My middle brother, once upon a time in high school, was making $14, $15 now, working in the botanical area of Home Depot. And he still doesn't know shit about grass and trees, but that's where they put him,
Well, it's weird because then that's when I became a bad employee because a buddy of mine got hold of me because, believe it or not, I had a cell phone. And there were still clamshells at the time, flip phones.
A little flip phone.
And he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, well, I'm doing a whole lot of bad. I go, I don't know what I want to do. Maybe I should transition back in. I don't know. I was on terminal leave. He goes, hey, get yourself fired at Home Depot. You could probably get unemployment. Oh, I was the guy that would clock in 5 minutes late.
You could make more money on unemployment than you could working for Home Depot.
Oh, I would sleep on the lawn furniture. My boss would come in, what are you doing? I'm sleeping. What do you think? Stuff like and then he pulls me to the side. He goes, I'm not going to fire you because my dad was a Vietnam vet and I love the veterans. I was like, oh man, well, how do I do this? How do I get fired where it's not like a crime? So I ended up just quitting. I was like, forget it, and went back to working odd jobs until finally, after I had my breakdown, because we all have those breakdowns. It's gonna happen. And I was turned down by 2 police departments and a nice warehouse job.
And let's talk about this for a second, because a lot of civilians listen to the show, and I want them to understand this, is when you're going through the military, and thank God you are a Marine, because that just makes it easier on me. I give everybody, all the other forces, a hard time. But when you get out, is when you start realizing that the military did nothing for you. And the civilian population doesn't really care about your service. And what I mean is they love, they honor, they respect what you did, but it doesn't do anything for your career, right? It doesn't give you anything to get you set up. And nobody tells you that as you're getting out, right? Nobody tells you that you're fixing to hit the hardest time in your life trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, and you have nothing. You have no college to fall back on, no skills to fall back on. You just got to go figure it out. And that's where a lot of people hit the dark times, because you go from living with a bunch of brothers and that lifestyle and the camaraderie that comes with that to out on your own with no support systems outside of maybe family, and your situation, caring for a 2.5-year-old and living in an abusive relationship, deciding, do I continue working Home Depot or do I move into my car? I mean, that's incredible.
Well, like you say, in the Marines, we're used to living the crap. I mean, that's what it is. And like what I try to explain to some people, even though, I'm pushing 40 now, is I'm used to being miserable, so I can appreciate what I have now. And
right.
That's what it was. And there was plenty of times overseas, especially during OIF, to where sometimes you just give in. You just have to. And I remember literally handshaking with the guy next to me, like, hey, if we get out of this, we get out of this. But sometimes we just had to let it happen. I mean, you're giving it, like, one time I was in charge of, like, hey, don't leave this window. This window's yours. Everybody, if they heard the infamous graveyard battle over in Fallujah. Yeah.
I didn't know you were in Fallujah. Jesus.
Yeah, but you know what? It was a good time. I'll just put it that way. Things I learned. I mean, it's hard. I think about Fallujah every day. I mean, how can you not? But one of them is like, I was supposed to guard a window in a schoolhouse for a, far, I guess you could say, it was an OP position. It was Echo Company running through the graveyard. We're a Fox Company. And my window was my window. Don't leave that window no matter what. And I had my gunner with me. So I was 51, 0351. So if people want to know what that is, I was anti-tank assault. and my gunner, he was always with me. So he had the other window right next to me, and we're just getting hit by RPGs left and right. We see them all. We couldn't leave our windows. All we could do was literally turn our back, so the blast would hit our back and the glass wouldn't hit us in the face. And that's what it was. And after like the third or fourth rocket, you just laugh about it because you're not leaving your window. That's your window, you know. That's how it is. Like when we come out to Corps, you know, a lot of people don't understand that. You know, you give us that job. That's our job. We're going to continue doing it. And people got to understand also there's a responsibility when you have a veteran working for you. You're going to tell us to do it. It's going to get done. You know, but don't be mad how we do it because you just want that done. We'll get it done. So, you know, lay off.
Right. Well, and, you know, we just may not get it done the way you want it, and we're going to find the shortcut. We're going to find the faster route. And, you know, if there's a handbook that's supposed to be followed, that's going to get pushed to the side. You know, and
because the handbook was written by someone behind a desk. It looks good on paper.
Right, right, 100%. You know, I mean, if you want a yes man, the military is not your person.
You know? Well, and that's where they think, because they think we're robots. But no, I mean, the freaking Crucible tells you right there. You know, you got to use that brain. So when I did have that breakdown, though, and I didn't know what to do, it was advice to me, what did I enjoy doing? And at the time, I had enjoyed recreational diving. I had enjoyed being in the water. My bones didn't hurt as much. It wasn't bad. I took some injuries. We take our injuries. It is what it is, right? So it was a job that kept me from hurting, but also I could work by myself. So I went to the commercial diver school in Wilmington, California. It had a long name, but basically people call it College of Oceaneering because I think it was National Polytechnic School of Engineering and Oceaneering, something like that. But
that's ridiculous. An engineer named that.
Right. A long name for something basically you're studying maritime operations. It was underwater construction, basically. So I went there and I was diving for about a year, getting wet, loving it. It was great. But Shoreline in Long Beach put in a new harbor. And when you put in a new harbor, you don't have all that growth on it, so the slips are higher. The slips are where boats go into dock. And if you're a diver and you're trying to get up on those docks, you like to have them pretty close to the ground. Not like 22nd Street where your electrical cables are in the water, but it was high enough. So I had to take my belt off, and I always been about 200 pounds, so I wore a 50-pound weight belt. Well, to get buoyant enough, I took my belt off, throw it on the dock, and I Supermaned up. Superman, I mean, I went straight to the bottom, made about 30 feet, because LA Harbor and all that. LA is not very deep. That's why those mega ships are having a hard time, and they're broaching or getting stuck in the ground. So I came up like Superman underwater to jump on the dock, and I did it wrong. I didn't hold my hand above my head properly, and I'm accelerating, and I go headfirst into an anchor. Oh, man, it was horrible. So what made it bad about that was that I had hopefully I'm using the term right, but like a jerry-rig root canal done when I was in Fallujah, and they never got it completed because our supplies got blown up in the convoy. So that jerry-rig root canal became loose. And I was in the most excruciating pain.
I can imagine. I mean, I had a Navy root canal done, and 20 years out of the military, and I go see my dentist, and she looks at it, and first words out of her mouth, she goes, "Oh, you got that done in the military." You know, that's how bad my root canal. I can only imagine what that. I mean, you smash your head on an anchor, and anybody who's had a root canal, you know the pain of that. And then to have that jar loose on top of it, I'm over here cringing just thinking about it.
Well, I didn't know you could go to the VA for a freaking emergency mouth injury. You know, dentists is only do emergencies only, and I had no idea. You know, I didn't pay attention, remember?
Right.
So, I went door to door, almost, so I guess you say literally office to office around the harbor looking for a job for benefits. And there was this one company called Marine Terminals Corporation at the time in 2005. And I would never forget the secretary there. Her name was Trina. Beautiful woman inside and out, because there I am. I'm walking around the harbors with a resume in hand that looked like probably a 6-year-old wrote because I didn't know better. And I go out with a polo and jeans, which I didn't know was like uniform today for management out there. And she's like, "Hey, are you here for an interview?" And I'm thinking, wow, well, we'll be in an interview with polo and jeans, and that's not proper. So I go, no, I'm looking for work. And I already got kicked out of 3 or 4 other offices. And the office downstairs kicked me out to go upstairs. So she's like, you know what, you got to apply online. And I was like, back to this. I didn't know how to use a computer, right? I mean, my buddy found that girlfriend for me. So she goes, you know what? You look like a nice guy. I'm going to go ahead and type it on the computer for you, and we'll get back to you. So I'm like, okay, I hear we'll get back to you all the time. No big deal. So I'm back at the college about a month later. I'm taking a physics exam, and my phone rings. So I was like, oh. So after the exam, I excuse myself, go outside, and they call. They go, hey, we want to offer you a superintendent position. And I was like, oh, okay, a superintendent. That sounds pretty good. So back in Chicago, superintendent means janitor.
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, I'll sweep floors, clean toilets. I'm not above that. I need insurance. So they're like, you know what a superintendent is? Like, yeah, janitor. They go, no, you need to come down to the office. They gave me an offer, a cash offer for a South Chicago boy and a guy living in the bad part of L.A. That was the most money I ever heard of in my life. So, and just so people know what it is, it was just $50,000. We look at it now like, $50,000, that's entry level. Well,
but yeah, hold on. 50,000, that's middle America. That's good money for a yearly salary, not let alone that they just handed you 50,000 cash, right, as like a sign-on bonus.
Well, that was the first job I ever had where there was actually an annual bonus. And the first time I got an annual bonus, it was a 5-figure bonus. Just put it like that. If I could do cartwheels, I would have done cartwheels because, I was like, you gave me that for doing my job? Wow. I never
that means you
signed a bonus.
You could upgrade the car you lived in. I mean, you can get something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's how dumb I was with money, though. I'm hoarding it like a dragon with gold. I did not want to spend the money. And my buddies are like, hey, what do you do with your bonus? They're all going on like vacations or, buying new cars, doing all that. And I was like, you're sitting in the bank. And they're like, well, you have a car note and all that. I go, yeah. And they go, why don't you pay off your car note? Why don't you pay off your credit card? I was like, because I had that scarcity mindset.
Right.
I was like, I'll never see this money again. And they're like, don't be dumb. You're paying more on finance. So that's when I started learning more and more and more about business by being in business and learning it. So I usually tell my son, because he's a teenager now, and I try and give him certain things here and there, but I always tell him I'm 10 years behind the curve. So even though I'm pushing 40, I feel like I'm pushing 30 because of what I know now. And like they always say, what was that song? I think it was that Rod Stewart guy, if I knew now what I knew, or
right.
You know what I know now.
Right.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, wow. It's like, I didn't get my college degree, my first one, till I was 33. Yeah, I was already a dropout twice, so it was a scary thing. I don't regret my undergrad, but I wish I would have studied something other than criminal justice.
But a lot of people that do college, and for me, college is overrated. But especially for the military coming out and you don't know what you do, everybody's like, be a cop, be a security guard, be something that some of your skills will translate over. So a criminal justice degree, I mean, only thing anybody gets out of coming out with a criminal justice degree is you become a cop. So it makes sense that that's the direction you started out and you got.
Well, there's a yes and no to that because, like with criminal justice, it's behavioral science, and that I do like. So it does teach you how to read the room, but then maybe it's kind of cheating because when I was 14, I joined the Explorer program in Chicago, and I was a customs explorer back when they were Treasury. And a year later, I guess because I got lucky, I became a paid intern. So from 15 to 19, I got to pal around with inspectors and agents, and I got to play with the K-9, ATF, DEA, FBI, all those beautiful people, and teaching me all sorts of wonderful stuff. I was the guy walking around the carousels with a pound of heroin strapped to my leg. That way the K-9, identify it. So a lot of times I'm squaring up next to people. They're waiting for their baggage. They're like, well, who's this guy right next to me? Well, it's a guy carrying dope, waiting for the dog to sit next to them. And they're like, oh, what a cute puppy. Well, the dog's doing his job. Then you have the cute little animals like Beagle Brigade from agriculture. And they're like a little clown show. They have their little sash and they're running around everything. This beagle looking for fruit. So So I was very fortunate to be involved with these law enforcement professionals for a long time. So criminal justice was kind of like natural. And my parents, being born by the border of Texas, customs was a big thing for them, because they saw those people growing up. When I would visit my dad's parents, literally Mexico you could see Mexico from my grandparents' front yard, close to the border they were.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a crazy journey so far. So you go through all of this, you land this janitor job, superintendent job. That's so awesome. But, when I grew up in Kansas, it was the same thing. Superintendent was a janitor, right?
Midwest.
So that's awesome. So what were you doing as a superintendent job? What was that about?
Okay, so I was the stevedore for, at the time, one of the older family-owned stevedore companies around.
And what's a stevedore?
Stevedore is operations of loading and unloading vessels, from dock to ship to final destination.
Kind of like the Merchant Marines type thing.
Yeah, I worked with a lot of those guys.
Okay.
So CMA, all those guys, they were colleagues or they were port captains, what have you. And so stevedoring operations, what I did, I started off on the vessel, loved it, did that for about 3 years. It was like being in the Marines all over again. I got along well because I was a nobody from nowhere. And I wasn't from LA. I wasn't CMA. I was the guy. My interview was done not even in a suit. I told HR, I go, I don't own a suit. I don't know what to do. She goes, what do you have? I go, I got my Chucks. You worn your Chucks. Everybody, you see a guy in Chucks with the blood stripe, and he has like 4 or 5 stacks of ribbons and jump. Right. They like it. And also I wanted to let them know I had tattoos. And it was fine. It worked out on the waterfront. I got along great with the longshoremen.
Wait, did you really go to the interview in your Chucks?
Oh, yeah. That's all I owned.
That is awesome. I have never heard anybody doing that. That's awesome.
Yeah, they loved it. I said at the time it was 2005, so everybody liked us then.
Right.
We were cliche as we are now. So.
Yeah, no kidding. So, wow. So when did you start your company?
Okay, so in 2015, I was less than a year from being unemployed because, we all got to have our highs and lows.
Right.
And in 2014, there was a big shift in maritime. I was one of those guys that eventually found his way without a job. And it is what it is. I'll never say anything bad about that company because it was probably the best 10 years, aside from being in the military, was on the waterfront. So, I loved it. And so I became over 35. The Air Force wouldn't take me because I was going to turn 35 doing OCS. I had my master's in business and accounting. So too old for that. I was too old to be groomed in banking other than being a universal banker. I was too old and I made too much at the harbor for accounting firms to pick me up. So breakdown number 2. What do you do? So I started traveling. I went to Europe with the wife, then we visited North Africa. Then from there, I went between the West Coast. I helped my parents manage the ranch for a little bit. I was just doing what I can to keep busy rather than go insane. And I was trying to figure out what to do. And then Boat Rehab helped me. I got my graduate certificates in diamond grading and jewelry and all those wonderful things. I was one test away from being a GG. And which is a graduate gemologist, and I thought about maybe I could work.
No wonder you and Greg Buda get along so well.
Yeah.
He's been a guest on the show, and his episode's fixing to be airing for too long. Okay, that makes sense now.
Mm-hmm. We and him have the same search, but he did his in Thailand, right? And I did mine in Carlsbad.
Okay,
Carlsbad, California. But his wife has that one class above me where I was trained and approved to be at her level. Then I moved to Texas. And that's the thing, everything was going wonderfully for a small part, and then we're always our own destruction to our success. We'll put it that way.
Absolutely.
So in LA,
but everything is a lesson to teach us the next step.
Exactly, because with that being 35 and too old, I couldn't get any of these jobs. Then the Democrats. Now I don't have any political party, and I don't claim any, and it's always going to be that way. But the Democrats, because I was in a Democratic area. And hey, if you're offended by these names, I apologize. It's just where I lived. So Janice Hahn was my congressperson at the time. I was one of her constituents. She found word about what was going on because I won a grant for education. to help pay off my student loans. And it was something I worked hard on. I wrote some papers. I got published. It is what it is. Won a lot of money. And it went around, and they're like, well, how'd this guy do it? I guess it made in some article in D.C. So she got a hold of me. And it's like, oh, what's going on? I go, I'm over 35. I'm unemployed. I can't find work. I have a master's. I'm a veteran. It's horrible. So she's like, well, we'll talk to you. Well, I'm just like anything else. I'm a poster child, right? So they're setting stuff up, and they're like, what are you going to do? I go, well, I applied for a Fulbright scholarship. And we all know, here's our name. People probably don't want to hear it here, but, it is what it is. They sponsor it. I don't care who sponsors it. It's a goal I'm hitting. So Fulbright was sponsored by National Geographic and the Clinton Foundation. So my goal was to spend a few months in Spain, do some economical studies about why their Moody and Poor ratings haven't been above a B. And a lot of that had to do with the age of expiration. And check this out, the spice trade. We're going to go into that.
Right.
And why they were sending out all their young blood to the New World, like my family in the 16th century. That's why I got to know more about my family history. See how everything's tying in?
Right.
So I was going to spend a few months in Spain, do my studies, do some artwork, and do whatever for Nat Geo, photography and articles. Then from there, I was going to send myself to Argentina because, Brazil's more Portuguese, even though, that's a bigger area with the diamond trade and GIA. So I'm trying to tie everything together. So after the 3 months in Argentina, then I was going to spend 3 months in Mexico and work my way back up to California. It was a 9-month program. You get paid X amount of euros because it was a euro-based system for the scholarship. So my liaison was a retired colonel, and she was supposed to help me out because she was my liaison for my university. You had to be an alumni from somewhere. Well, she decided halfway through our program that she wants to start her own business. It failed. She dropped me. So Fulbright went out the window. So then Janice Hahn was trying to set it up and use me as her, I guess you could say, puppet so they could do some educational things. Because guess what? There was an election going on, and there was this gentleman named Bernie Sanders that was talking about free education. Woo, woo. So that was going on. Well, I left California because I got tired of certain things. I was applying for Google. They were playing a little. I'm too old for some of their games. It would look wonderful on the resume, but it wasn't going well. I turned down a job for Spectrum, not the cable company, but a high jewelry company, and I came out to Texas. So I'm in Texas. I became a corrections officer. He says criminal justice degree for something, right? And Janice Hahn's people call me like, you know what? We're trying to set it up so you could go on Yahoo with Katie Couric. We need you to tell your story. I go, oh, great. They go, when can you come down to the office? Because I will go see the deputy director. I'm like, well, I'm in Texas right now. They go, what? I go, yeah, I left. I needed work and I got an opportunity. And they're like, well, okay, bye. I'm no longer a constituent.
Right.
So I can't help them, so they don't want to help me, and that's politics in a nutshell.
Right. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, wow. You've been all over the place, and, now you're sitting as a corrections officer.
At that time, until I got sexually assaulted, it became a freaking joke because it was by a female inmate, and I didn't appreciate getting grabbed a certain way, and when I reported it, it was ha, 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 and I'm like, you know what? No, because if it was the other way around, I'd be in handcuffs by Texas Rangers and put in jail. So I was very fed up, and I'm like, you know what? What's the best way to allow some steam? I'm going to the range. So I'm sitting at the range, and I get a phone call from this government contractor I was dealing with before. They're like, hey, where are you? And I go, why does it matter? No one ever knows where I'm at. I come and go all the time. It's just, I don't like people keeping tabs on me. So, trust me, I'm always around somewhere. And they're like, are you in California still? I'm like, no. They go, could you be in California? I go, what do you need? Well, we got a GM position open up, and we need you to take over for a while, and, we need to revamp and do whatever. I'm like, you know what? You got it when you need me. And this was in June, I want to say. And I go, you know what? I got to sell my house in California. I go, I'll be there in 2 weeks. So I gave my 2 weeks notice at the prison. I went to go be a subprime contractor over for a federal contractor that did military installations as well as private companies for alarms and security and what have you. So I had to hire on some new people, be, the liaison between the owners, people, and the contract. So it was a fun job. Then I got to be management again, and I like it. And it was good. And so I started focusing more on my business because then I had the free time. I was selling my house. I like multitasking. So I like
obviously.
Yeah. So it was a good time, but I didn't get into my spices yet. I knew a lot about it. I did it for myself. I had recipes out, but I didn't want to do it in California. So I was scared about the, not sanitation really, but regulations. So I had that security company, and just owning a company in California, you know how it is. It's expensive. Then I found out about opening up in Texas. I'm like, I got properties out there now. Why don't I just do that? Oh, and then I found out you're a veteran. Yeah, it's free. All I got to do is show us your DD. So I was like, well, I could open up a business for free. All I got to do is show my DD 214. They're like, yes. So I guess I'm doing that. I'm not going to have a California company anymore. So I EIN'd and I transferred my C Corp over to LS. I didn't have the C Corp yet. Oh, I had the C Corp in Texas. Because if I had a C Corp in Cali, then that's automatically at least 800 or 10% plus 8 over what you make. Right. So I was like, forget about it. So that's how it went. So I'm in Texas. I'm working in different facilities with this government contractor. Found out more about food handling. Got my food handling certification in Texas. Then the spices were born for public. They're always something I did for myself. And, I have a barbecue and I do my spices there. But now I open it to others.
So this is crazy. So you're a grunt in the Marine Corps. Knuckle dragger, whatever the hell you want to call him, right? And really with no skill sets coming out, right. Go through a stage of homelessness, living in the car, abusive relationships, to living the high life as an overpaid janitor, superintendent, right? To traveling the world, figuring things out, working a ranch, back in Texas to get back to a GM job in California, and now you're back in Texas playing with spices, and now have opened up a complete spice line that's going out to the general public.
Oh, yes. Oh, it's great. It works out, and then thanks to a beautiful network I'm part of, I published a book. It became an international bestseller on my first spice blend and how it was created back in 2010, 2012 timeframe. So we have a lot of goals going on. We have a monthly subscription club with the spices. We are going to a new server.
Wait, I didn't know that. You actually have a subscription club for your spices?
Oh, yes.
Are your spices any good?
Oh, they're the best.
Are you sure?
Just ask me.
Tell me a little bit about the spices. So what do you have? I know you get the barbecue rub.
Yes. So actually, one of them that I created is because LA had a hard time with allowing grilling going on. People are getting fined, and being that I am of Texas stock.
Wait, they were being fined for grilling?
Oh, for smoke, for pollution. And I will always bring back mesquite.
Wait.
Yeah.
I'm hung up here. So smoke coming off your grill is pollution?
Yes, sir. Just like we couldn't water except on certain days because we have the drought.
Well, that makes sense. You have even in Texas we got water laws, but I can't grill in my backyard because that's polluting.
If someone complains they didn't like the smell and mesquite isn't for everybody, and I would smoke a lot of meat, especially after a hunt. It could be a hard time. So
okay, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. I get it if you're smoking cigarettes, cigars, something, that is going to kill you, right?
Right.
And somebody takes offense. But if I'm cooking in my backyard and my smoke wafts over to you and you take offense and I can get fined for polluting the atmosphere.
Overpopulation does that.
I'm going to go to prison because I'm going to deck the dude that freaking...
Well, you see right now, you can't even have a plastic straw in California.
Yeah, I saw that just pass. And
it's a shame. Santa Barbara is such a beautiful little town, and I had such great memories there.
And I don't want to pick on California, but at some point, yeah, they do. At some point you got to say, just stop.
Right.
Pull the warning stickers off of everything and just let everybody sort themselves out.
Well, it makes me laugh. Like if I go to, let's say, a Ross or Marshall's or something here in Texas, and that's an overstock store, even Nordstrom Rack, all that. And you see something that didn't sell in Cali and up in Texas has that Prop 65 on there, just for the Californians.
Right.
It was like,
well,
here?
And a lot of food and everything else gets a special California clause that says, known to cause cancer in California. Well, no shit. Everything causes cancer, right?
Exactly. And that's how the smoke does it. So that's why I have like the Vaquero blend. And originally when I came up with these names, because I was still new and I was just like every other veteran-owned company, I gave names to like warrior classes, and now it kind of like stuck. People are used to, I was getting changed the names and do all that, but you know what? People are used to Raider. That's the home blend. I was a Raider. It was named after us. That's why the book was mainly about my story. Then I have Ronin. That's my chicken and pork one. That one's obviously Ronin, a samurai and all that.
Right.
It's kind of categorized. I have like Rajput. That one is more of a curry blend, but that's like the Indian from India class of warriors. You had the Vaquero. That one was more of my.
So were you trying to make a name like Worcestershire sauce so nobody could pronounce it?
That's on every base, so he did something right, that with Heinz.
Right.
But, because Vaquero turned out to be very popular. But that one, like, I have a great-grandfather on my maternal side, Fort Back, that was a colonel in the Mexican Army, and he even has a statue in Monterrey that I need to go see. And he led what they call the 300 Rifles of Leon, because he got a small militia together to push back the Hungarians. There was a lot of Hungarian mercenaries that were coming up with the French to Mexico to reinforce the southern, plight during the Civil War. So he helped push them back. So that was in honor of him when I came out with the Vaquero. Then I have like the 88 Mike, which we all have sponsors. And the sponsor for me in LA was a family, the Belize family. So there's the Belize 88 Mike. He was a truck driver in the Army. So in honor of them, because they put me through the beginning of my business, and they've been a huge supporter of Syndgar Trading Company, that they get their own blend.
Dude, you got such an awesome story, man. I mean, it's just one killer ride. So you have an online, a monthly subscription to your spices. How do people find that? If they want to go try your spices, how do they find all that information?
So what they do, they log into our website, or just go into
which is what?
Mobile is www.Syndgar Trading Company. Syndgar, not like the radio, is Syndgar. And people ask, why that? Well, my wife's maiden name is Sindel. So Sin. We both have a D for our first names and then Gar for Garcia. So Syndgar Trading Company. And what separates us from the other spice clubs or other subscriptions you could get is that with us, you get a special blend as a subscriber that's not open to the public.
Oh, cool.
And that's what comes out. So I put in some complimentary blends. Trust me, I got the whole next year mapped out of what I'm going to put out for these people that support us, because it's beautiful what they do for us. So you should get something special.
Right.
Exclusive. And I don't tell you what it is until you get the box, because it's like Christmas. Be surprised.
I love that.
And that's why it's not available to the public. It's just for you because you're so awesome in supporting us.
That's cool.
And it comes out, and people love it. And yes, we're being rated. We sent out samples to Flick Hospitality, and that's in New York. Their executive catering company. They got their chefs. They're starred. So far, so good with our red meat. We hear they love it. So we sent them out some poultry mix. There's also a televised chef, Brian Jacobs. He's also part of the Vetrepreneur Tribe. He rated my home blend. He liked it. He said it was delicious. That to me, that's a huge honor, because if you look up Brian Jacobs, look at his LinkedIn, what he does for the veteran community, his culinary school. The guy's going to have a TV show this guy's just totally awesome, and he likes my blend. So it's like, wow, you're real, and that's every total that I go, it just feels so real that a real rated chef likes it. And then of course, everybody that's bought, I've been around 3 years, and with the spices going on 2. And the beautiful thing is that we remained a 5-star company. No one's ever complained about it. We love it. And even got to the point, thanks to like the Vetrepreneur Tribe, I became a sponsor in Australia for a vintage cooking school called River Pinups, or is the vintage cooking school by Miss Bronte Carlo. And they also run River Pinups. Wade Saxton, he's in the tribe. I sent them a bunch of spices, and they used it in their cooking show out there in Australia. So we're global.
Nice, dude. That's awesome. That's awesome.
And it's great. So River Pinups, they got my attention because who doesn't like vintage? Who doesn't like pinup girls?
Right.
And when I found out that they did cooking, I was like, well, here you go. I sent them out a bunch of spices. Now before they do their show, our logo pops up, all that.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, so it's great. So our company's doing great. It's all because not us. Well, what inspires me is you guys. Everybody giving us what we need. And that's why it keeps growing and getting better.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, dude, Alejandro, man, I got to tell you, man, this has been a hell of a ride for you sharing your story. I mean, you're one of those guys you can sit down with a drink and you're going to have a story for every freaking occasion, right? And it's just going to go on forever, man. I really appreciate you sharing your stories. So they can go to your website to reach out to you and find all information. We'll put all that in the show notes. But thanks for sharing your journey with us. Here's how I like to wrap up every show.
Yeah.
Right? And I do stump some people with this, so be ready. If you were going to leave my audience with a quote, a phrase, a saying, a statement, a mantra, something they could take with them on their journey, you know, something, especially if they're going through it, they're getting stacked up against it, what would be that phrase or mantra or saying that you would say, hey, think about this or say this when you're going through it?
Wow, you know, I guess I wish I did have something profound and all that. And it's like, I think about it a lot. It's like, you know, I said this in, I guess, the last interview, you know, I'm a big fan of bad movies. To me, they're not bad. They're my favorite. And it always sticks with me whenever I'm going through a rut. And it's Vanilla Sky, Jason Lee, his character. He says, you know, you can't enjoy the sweet without the sour. And that's how it goes. You know, we're going to have our ups. We're going to have our downs. We're going to get kicked in the balls. It's going to be hard. You have to, because you got to appreciate that for that whole human experience. We got to have heartbreak. I say that in my book. You know, you got to have the heartbreak. You got to have the hate. You got to have that so you can appreciate the love and the goodness and the beautiful. Like right now, I have such a beautiful life and I love it. Even when I look back at when it was hard and we were going through the abuse and homelessness, even then it wasn't that bad because, I mean, I'm still in the U.S., you know,
right.
The country out there. I mean, there's so much opportunity. And if you could pull yourself up from that BS and be like where I'm at now, where else can you do that but here in the great U.S. of A? And even better, the great state of Texas.
You and me both, right? We're biased on that. So.
Right.
Well, dude, thanks so much for sharing your story, man. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a beautiful day.
You know what, guys? Really, thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people. And from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped to over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, Get My Social Content Done right now.